A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 90.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curren and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass, living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. In today's episode, the kick in the ass. Yes, I've had my ass kicked up, down I-95 and back and forth and everything else, John. This is going to be a personal kind of episode because I'm going to go into some details that a lot of people don't know with, outside my family.
Yeah, this is, I have to say, this is going to be definitely be a difficult episode for us. If you're a follower of the show, you'll know that we've had a brief kind of period of not releasing new material, and this is all part of it. Life does throw you a kick in the ass, from time to time, and it's sometimes difficult to share, what's going on, but because it is personal, but also because there's so much unknown to it. And, when you get your ass kicked or start getting your ass kicked, sometimes it's hard to see what direction the ass kicking is coming from, right?
Yeah, man.
You're not really sure what's going on.
And I don't. So here's how it began. Really, it all kind of began with a call to John. I was having these symptoms of random little things. My yearly physical was coming up last month in December, and I had all these different odd little annoyances, if you call them. And I was like, I didn't think anything of it. I even questioned whether I should tell my doctor. So one day, what do? What they tell you don't do. I Googled my symptoms. And something came up that I did not like. So I gave John a call because I knew he knew about this topic. And I said, hey, what symptoms were your dad facing when he, was diagnosed with ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, which John's dad unfortunately had and passed away from. And it is basically, if you get diagnosed with this disease, you've got 2 to 5 years left if you're lucky.
Yeah. And that's that. And from my point of view, when Tom called me, I mean, that is just the strangest question, and Tom prefaced the question with, I'm going to ask you a very strange question. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, and John was like, I'm scared to want to ask why you're asking this.
Yeah. And so, whether it's affecting you directly or affecting a friend of yours, when you're faced with a terminal illness and it becomes personal, it's difficult. It changes the way you view life. I think it puts things into perspective.
So John, let me go back for a second and talk about some of the things that I'm experiencing so people kind of understand. And it didn't all hit at once, it seemed. The first thing I think I noticed is I started choking on water. I do the stairs. I was doing the stairs daily. So I'd run 100 flights of stairs every day. And I was doing that since last year. If you're listening to the show, you know that. And it's been doing wonders for me. However, I started noticing that when I swallowed water, if I didn't concentrate, for some reason I'd choke, and I was like, "That's weird." I didn't even tell my wife right away because I thought it was like one of those weird little quirky things, and she was going to be like, "Oh, it's one of those weird things that happened to Tom." So that was one of the first symptoms that I noticed. The other symptoms are, I feel like I am drunk when I walk around. And even a little bit, I even told my wife, I said, I feel like I kind of feel that way a little bit when I drive, which is scary, but I feel like something is off. Maybe confused a little bit here and there. I don't know. But those are the two main symptoms. I have another one that happened beginning of December where all of a sudden my left leg just starts buckling. Like when someone comes up behind you and hits you in the knee, back of the knee, and your leg just kind of drops. My leg just does that randomly. And John, I was thinking, well, I had taken off training the stairs since Thanksgiving time. I hadn't trained that much because the change in the sun was setting earlier. It was hard for me to get there in time. So I wasn't training as often. And I was also training jiu-jitsu at a new school. So the days that I trained jiu-jitsu, I wouldn't go to the stairs. So I thought, well, maybe my legs are, responding to not training. So that's some of them. Also,
yeah, and as we get older, right? I mean, some of these things that you mentioned, do happen to all of us, I think, from time to time, like maybe not swallowing, like it goes down the wrong way. Or you swallow and it's difficult. I mean, I think that happens to us. And as we get older, of course, our muscles weaken, right?
Right.
So, I mean, some of this stuff, just taken individually, you could attribute your aches and pains just to getting older.
Right. And I have this weird thing with my mouth right now. And I thought, I drink ice water like crazy, like all the time. My mouth is like always cool, right? Right now, if I suck in the air, it's like I just had a York peppermint patty. It's the weirdest thing. And it also feels like the tip of my tongue is almost like burned, like I burned it, but it doesn't go away. And I also have excess saliva, right? So that's some of the symptoms. I'm also slurring my speech. So if you notice me talk a little bit different sometimes, I'm trying to enunciate, but my speech has become slurred. What else?
Yeah. So,
So these things started to hit, John. And like I said, I started kind of like poo-pooing. I'm like, oh, it's nothing. I went to Home Depot and got some mulch for my yard. And I noticed that the bags were like, usually I'm throwing stuff around all the time. They seemed heavy. I was like, man, I'm getting freaking old. It's hard to throw these bags out. And I also felt very unsteady when I was walking my backyard, because whatever this balance issue is, it's really noticeable when I'm on uneven pavement. So if I'm in someone's backyard or, walking on a pool deck or sand, I really feel it. Feel like I'm drunk and I'm going to fall over. In fact, I'd gone to a Christmas party, and I was stumbling around like I was drunk, and I'm like, man, I'm not even drinking. What the hell? So
yeah,
I knew I had all these symptoms, and I was worried about ALS, but I said, all right, I've given my blood already because I had my yearly physical coming up. So I waited for 2 weeks or whatever, suffering this knowledge, worrying that shit, I might have ALS. So I went to the doctor, and he checked me out, and he said, oh, everything's great. Your blood work is perfect. I don't even have to correct you on anything. So I told him, I said, that's not what I want to hear, because I've been having these symptoms. And when I told him, he was like, well, ALS is very, very rare. He only had one patient out of all his years that's had it. But, he was concerned. So he recommended me a neurologist. And I was like, can you get me in right away? And he's like, unfortunately, he didn't know a neurologist that he could. So I was really freaked out then. And the thing is, my wife didn't really believe me, I think, at the time. She thought that I was just, exaggerating some of the symptoms.
Yeah.
And thought I was overreacting. But when my doctor, who is also her doctor, was concerned, I think it got real for her. So anyways, what I did is I called every neurologist in Miami and Fort Lauderdale that I could find that would book me as soon as possible. I finally found one guy. This was December 22nd. I finally found one guy that would take me the day after Christmas. So I went there. As soon as I walked into the office, he goes, oh, your face is drooping. I didn't even realize my face was drooping. But if I smile, my left side of my mouth does not go up. So now I'm thinking maybe I had a stroke. So he orders me an MRI and a bunch of electrical tests on the stuff. Of course, he finds weakness in the left leg, and I think there were a little bit in my left arm. They sent me for the MRI, and he brings me back the next day. We come there with my wife, and he goes, I know you were worried about ALS, but I don't think it's that. He says, what I think you have is MS, and it's very treatable, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, I know about MS. I don't want it, but I'll take it because it's not terminal. I can deal with a condition. So he says my insurance was changing, so I couldn't see him anymore after the beginning of the year. So he recommended I go to the Cleveland Clinic, who are, have experts on MS. So I called and made an appointment with Cleveland Clinic like 2 weeks later. And, so I was a little relieved because I didn't think so much that I was dying. I thought I had MS. Well, when I went, because one of the things about MS, it shows up as lesions in the brain. So that's what they see in the MRI. And I knew from just researching that ALS did not show up on brain scans. So when I went to the MS doctor, she looked at me and had me tested me and stuff like that. And she says, you know what? I don't think you have MS. And I was like, well, what about the lesion? She goes, they were like dots. You could have got it from a headache. So now I'm back worried about ALS. That's where I was. And again, I was freaked out. And mind you, some of these times, it's all kind of blurred into one because this has been going on for the last month. I mean, there was times, John, that I thought for sure I was dying. Because not only, ALS also starts, like they say, like between the index finger and the thumb, right? And my left hand, whenever I had this cushion at work, and every time I picked it up, I would drop it. I was like, what the heck? And I have good grips from jiu-jitsu, but I was like, why am I dropping this? That's another
I remember back when my dad was first diagnosed with ALS, they say it could be genetic, but it doesn't have to be. And, I was worried about it. My dad went to Sloan Kettering and got tested, and he says that it was not, it's not hereditary. He said it was some genetic change, but something genetic, but it wasn't hereditary.
They don't know where it comes from.
But I could see my dad like totally lying because there's nothing that you can do about it. So, so after, as my dad was going all through this, I remember kind of having these sympathy kind of conditions pop up, like having difficulty swallowing, or maybe it just, you seemed a little bit more labored, or, whatever. These conditions kind of pop up in your head, or something happens and you start thinking to yourself, holy cow, maybe it's affecting me too. I guess your mind can kind of play tricks on you, and when you're reading things online,
absolutely,
from Google, and you're doing research as you would on anything that affects you, it's really easy to scare the hell out of yourself.
Oh yeah, and I would sit at work all day reading these things and watching these people's stories and talking about, they'd be interviewing the guy and he seemed kind of normal, saying, yeah, I got ALS and it's hard walking down the driveway and stuff. They fast forward like 6 months and the guy's in a wheelchair and like ready to croak, and I'm like, holy crap, right?
Yeah,
because that's what I'm picturing is going to happen to me. Because not only ALS is also, for some reason, it attacks men a lot, and my age, which I'm 50, and military veterans, which they don't know why. In fact, the military has even specified it as a military-related disease. And I'm a veteran of the Air Force, right? And I'm like, holy crap, is it some kind of immunization that they gave us, or, they say hazardous metals, possibly like lead and stuff. I was like, well, I'm an engineer, I solder, but so I was freaking out, man. And so here it is. I think for weeks that I have ALS, and I'm looking at people and I'm seeing like 60-year-old guys walk by, and I'm thinking, I'm like envious, because I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get to that point. My mind, that's what I was thinking. I was like, I'm not going to be able to, if you listen to the show, I want to get a motorhome and retire, and I have all these plans. I have some stuff in jiu-jitsu, and I was like, this is never going to happen because I'm not going to live to see it. I'm not going to live to see my grandchildren, And this time I'm trying to keep all this to myself because I don't want, my kids didn't know. No one else in the family knew. My wife knew, after that. And there was times I would be driving home from work, John, and I would just break down, man.
I mean, we were talking a lot through that time as well, and it's really easy to get worked up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really easy to get emotional about it. It hits you at a very personal level, and you have every right to feel any feeling that you have about it. Especially when it involves you. But as you and I were talking, what I remember too is thinking, asking you, well, right now you're kind of waiting on a diagnosis, but if you get a diagnosis, what does that really change? And what would you do differently? And that's when you started to kind of just, it wasn't random. It was very direct and very quick. And you kind of blurted out a list of priorities, like, getting your kids' college funds in order, and traveling, or doing this or doing that. You mentioned all, like, you just rattled off like 4 or 5 things. And to me, I think, regardless of a diagnosis, you have to take that into account, into what your priorities of life are, no matter what. No
Right.
matter what. No matter if none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Whether you have this diagnosis, of something that's really going on and something quite serious in your life, or it could be something quite serious that's not health related.
Right. Well,
I mean, it could be, anything.
here's the thing. I mean, right now, I do not believe I have ALS. I think that I have something else.
Right. And it could
that
be
week that it
related, right?
It could be. I don't want to throw jiu-jitsu under the bus, but there's
Right.
been instances where people have they get a small rip in their artery, like a millimeter, like a real microscopic tear, which can cause symptoms of a stroke. And that's what it really, I mean, when you put my symptoms together, it's like I had a stroke. But I'm like, I don't smoke, I don't have any problems with blood pressure, I don't have any of this stuff that would happen with a stroke. But
Right.
I do, and I did in jiu-jitsu that week that I really noticed it, get choked quite often. And me being having pride, when we wrestle at the end, we fight, and sometimes I don't tap out. And I know for sure that one week I had 2 really hard jiu-jitsu classes, and I saw one guy had me in a choke, and I saw that like, everything starts going around like a tunnel, like you're ready to pass out, and finally I tap. And I had several guys after that try to choke me as well, and I resist because I got kind of a strong neck, and I can get out of it a lot.
You
of
almost
times.
train yourself, right? You almost train yourself to push yourself to that limit,
Yeah,
to
so
almost blacking out, right? Before tapping out.
So I remember both those classes I went home with a headache, and I don't get headaches very often. And what was even stranger is one of those mornings I woke up with a headache. I think it was that Thursday morning I woke up, and I remember I'd taken an Advil because I never take anything, and my wife
Right.
always yells at me, if you have a headache, take an aspirin or something. So I
And
went
if
ahead.
you're taking it, you're really feeling really
And that
bad.
was the same day I was staggering around with the mulch in the backyard. And then that same day, I was putting up Christmas decorations or something, and somehow I threw out my knee, and I was like, well, is all this stuff related? And I ended up going to the masseuse and getting a massage. I never had a massage before, and he's pulling on my head and stuff like that. All that stuff could be related, because if it is blood related, pulling on my head, obviously affects. Stop thinking that it wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't that kind of massage.
Well, no, the way you're saying it made me question it. I'm sorry.
But no, I mean, there's been people that have got strokes from getting a massage, going to the beauty parlor, from going to the chiropractor and getting an adjustment. So it's possible. And it's weird though, because I think I've had some of the symptoms that before that week, like the choking, I'm pretty sure I had before, because I was at the tower once and I choked, and I think it was Black Friday I told Jen about it. So some of the symptoms showed up earlier than that, so I can't 100% blame jiu-jitsu unless it's an ongoing problem and I have this rip or whatever in my artery, and every time I get my head yanked on, it affects me a little more. It's quite possible. So
yeah, so I mean, that right now there's still a lot of unknowns.
right.
I think you're still trying to figure figure out what's going on.
Right. And since then,
herein lies the real crux of this episode is that, life gives you these swift kicks in the ass, and, how do you deal with them? And I think that, this, what you're going through, Tommy, is, I don't know. I think this topic is going to be important to a lot of people, because we all face our own kicks in the ass.
And it was also facing the fear. I remember our episodes on fear, on Don't Fear the Reaper. I mean, I was trying to put all this stuff into practice. And I remember I saw Star Wars, and this is a spoiler alert. So if you have not seen Star Wars, you can turn off the volume or skip ahead for a second.
I haven't seen it.
Well, you don't care. I don't even think you saw the original Star Wars, so you don't count.
Oh, you're killing me, man. I saw it with you.
So when I was a kid, Luke was obviously one of my favorite characters, as most probably boys that age. But he was my childhood hero. And in this movie, Luke ends up joining the Force, becoming one with the Force, and dies and fades away like the Obi-Wan ghost. Well, in my mind, I told myself, hey, my childhood hero, it's his time to join the Force. Maybe it's just my time. So I tried to be optimistic and say, hey, and how we've been talking about Stoic philosophy, where there's things you can change and there's things you can't. I can't change what has happened to me, but I can change how I respond to it. Because, it was Christmas time. It was New Year's. I didn't want to ruin those holidays, especially if they might be some of my last. I was like, I don't want the kids to remember that. And my kids didn't know. I hugged my daughter Logan one time, and she was like, "Oh my God, who's sick? Did someone die?" And I'm like, "No one died. She's not used to me hugging her like that."
Right.
And I didn't want to scare her, so I did not tell her at the time. So since then, I've been to the doctor. I've had more MRIs with contrast and checked out my neck. They still can't find out what it is, but I rest assured that I asked my doctor, and I said, listen, could this be ALS? And she said, I wouldn't even consider it as ALS. And I said, why? And she's like, well, you have an abnormal brain scan. So I said, so it is abnormal. And I had her showing me the spots in my brain or whatever. So that made me feel assured that it is not ALS. So hopefully, she's right. I'm trying to get out, and hopefully it's not some other terminal disease, which I don't think so. But most likely, all the MRIs point to multiple sclerosis. And I have a friend who's had MS for, over 10 years. Yeah, I used to work with him, another radio engineer. I called him. I said, out of the blue, he lives in Indiana, and he's like, Stewart, I haven't heard this voice in a long time. And I was like, Adam, I just want to, I called you because you're the expert. So he explained to me what it was, what happens. He unfortunately has a type of MS that there is no medicine for, and he's lost his ability to walk. So, that didn't make me feel real happy, but, I was like, well, at least I have someone that, I can use as my Obi-Wan, someone that I can at least go to and explain like what's going on, what to expect. So.
Yeah, and so much of this stuff, you don't know what to expect. You've never gone through it, and honestly, you don't really know what you're going through at this point. Even with a diagnosis like you have, it's not necessarily set in stone. There was a guy that I used to work with that was experiencing, a lot of tiredness and headaches and just a lot of different symptoms. But he got diagnosed with ALS, and his wife. This was a very chronic condition, and I'm not sure exactly what he was going through, but he and his wife weren't satisfied with that diagnosis, and they kept digging and they kept asking, and I think it even got confirmed, ALS. And they kept digging deeper and come to find out that it was Lyme's disease, a totally treatable disease. So he went from a diagnosis of a terminal illness to one of being totally treatable and fully recoverable.
Yeah, I'm actually
don't know.
I'm actually getting tested for that in a week or two when I gotta go give blood. But that's one of those things you hope. I'm like, have I been bit by? I go camping, but evidently the tick that causes Lyme disease does not live in the southeast United States, so I'm probably out of luck with that one. But it is on the radar. I have to have a spinal tap, which does not sound fun from everything I've heard of it. I hear mixed reviews. Some people say it's not that bad, and other people are like, oh, it's horrific. Yeah.
So every experience that we go through, whether it's dealing with life or death or not, can be very scary. And until you go through it, some things you just have to go through to fully understand. Almost like being a parent. We can talk about it all we want, but until that rubber hits the road and you're going through it yourself, that's another story. Now, Tommy, I know that we throw a lot of quotes out on this show, and I didn't want this episode to be any different. And as I was doing some research, they said that there's a saying in the military, and I'm not in the military, but I thought I'd share it with you. It says, embrace the suck. Every stumble, every painful moment, every struggle, every missed chance, every foul up. It's all a moment in which you can practice calm, strength, fortitude, resilience. It's all a moment to practice virtue, to be good, to be kind, to be patient, to be understanding, to be the person you say you'd like to be. Apparently that's a saying in the military.
Yeah, I had never heard it, but I like it. It's probably from the Marines or the Army. John, I promised God, I was like, man, if this is not terminal, I promise I'll be optimistic. I'm not gonna have, I was, it's hard, but I've told myself that I want to, I refer to it as the kicking ass, because this is my wake up call to work on projects that I have going on with John on the side, to get it together and not think that I have 5 years to do this, because I used to be like, my son graduates in 5 years, so I got this time. No, I got to start now, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. I've done everything by the book as far as to be healthy. I train, I exercise, I eat good, I don't smoke, I don't drink. In my family, I'm like the fittest person. Every time I go to the doctor, I'm like Captain America when he's like, you're the healthiest person I've seen all day. So for me to all of a sudden be facing something where I've been to more doctors in this last month than I've been in my life. That's all. And so as much as prevention as you try, sometimes you can't do anything about it. It just happens. And you I ask myself, I'm like, well, hell, man, I got 3 other brothers, and they all, drink, smoke, are overweight, older than me. Why am I getting something like this? You start asking those questions, but you can't reason it, because it happens.
There are things that you just can't change, and there are some things that you're never going to understand the reason why. There's just no explaining that whatsoever. And I think that's what this show is all about. We're on this journey trying to figure that out for ourselves. What can we do? There's so much, I know I've said this several times on the show. I've learned this from my dad when he was going through ALS, and he was talking about how it's a waste of time to think about all these things that we can't do, or people that we've lost, or, the woe is me kind of attitude, because you can't change anything. He says, but there are plenty of things in our life that we can change. Of course, sometimes that opens us up to maybe more hurt, or, they say ignorance is bliss, and searching Google for symptoms, that you're going through can really raise the red flag or the alarm within inside, and trigger some emotions that you just don't even know that you have until you're, thinking that you're facing death. I know that when I first learned that my dad had ALS, I did the same thing. I went to Google, I started searching, and it scared the hell out of me. I broke down thinking I lost my dad. I still had several more years, and I did end up losing him. It didn't change the prognosis, but it scared the hell out of me, man. And so I can relate to what Tom's going through.
And I had to get to a point where I could talk to my children. I didn't want to tell my children that I possibly had a fatal disease. So we waited till we could talk to the expert in MS and kind of like explain that I might have MS, but we're not really sure. But it's still that unknown. But we had to tell them, otherwise, I mean, they'll probably think I'm drinking, because even my own brother, he was helping me lift some. I had bought this, which I wasn't thinking I was sick at the time. I bought this like squat machine, like this thing to train my legs. And I had my brother happened to be over visiting my mom. And I was like, hey, Jimmy, can you help me get this off the back of my truck? So it's a big heavy weight machine. He got it off, but he told his wife, you think Tommy's been drinking? Because he noticed the slurring. He noticed me falling all over. And at the time, I really don't even think I noticed it yet. I know Jennifer, my wife, had mentioned, we had gone Christmas shopping, and she was like, why are you mumbling? You never mumble. And I was like, I don't know. I thought that maybe, I was, my mom, my sister kind of slurs sometimes. And I was like, well, maybe it's just genetic. And maybe I'm getting older.
You've always kind of mumbled.
Yeah, but it's more, when I get tired, I'm like,
and I understand what you're saying, which is really kind of funny.
Right.
But yeah, it's, this is a difficult, this is a difficult show for us. And, as a listener, you might be thinking, does this change anything for the show? And for me, I think it strengthens our desire to put ourselves out there and share what's going on in our lives, and how the swift kicks in the ass affects all of us. And, what can we do when we're getting our ass kicked? What can we do to protect our ass from getting kicked? That's what the show is all about. That's what we've been doing the last several years. And we hope that it helps you, the listener, to kind of take each day at a time and keep moving forward on your own path and on your own journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's humbling too, John. I mean, I've gone from fighting jiu-jitsu at least three times a week, and training the stairs daily, to yesterday I jumped up out of the chair. I was going to get my wife, pick her up at church, and I jumped out of the chair real quick, and I fell directly on my ass. My son's like, "Are you all right?" It's just like my legs just didn't work. And to have stuff like that, or last night we were sitting on the couch with my wife, I'm drinking water, all of a sudden, boom, I'm basically, it looks like I'm vomiting water. Water's coming out of my mouth because I'm choking. And I had a full mouth. I had nowhere else to go, so I had to spit it out. It's just little things like that kind of, it sucks that my family has to go through it and worry, but what I've noticed too is you revert back to your childhood. Like for Christmas, my wife had asked what I wanted. I ended up getting all like those big Spider-Man books like I gave your son, like the Marvel encyclopedias and stuff like that. I was like, just give me these, because they kind of like took my mind away from everything else. I had to escape. And I've also been practicing yoga. I've been going with my wife to yoga class, and that's helped, because you have to focus on your balance. It's gentle, so I'm not like, because I stopped lifting weights and stopped training everything for the last month because I was scared. I didn't know, what happens if I have a stroke again, or what did I do, because I didn't know what it was.
Right.
So I just went today. We postponed this so like an hour or two, so I could go to the stairs where I normally go, and it's humbling. I'm going up. I maybe went up about 5 or 6 times, slowly, like walking, and still notice that I don't have it anymore. I don't have all the last year of training. Kind of just like went out the window, and I'm gonna have to retrain my body to do that again.
Yeah. Well, it's going back to the Stoic philosophy. we have to expect that life is going to be difficult and life is going to be a struggle and life is going to throw obstacles our way. And it really is through our character and the strength of our character and our own personal growth that we see our way through those obstacles. I find myself, facing obstacles myself each and every day, just like everyone else does. And what I'm noticing is how I react to those obstacles and how that affects me in my everyday life. It's, what Tom is going through definitely has impacted me as well, and gets me thinking. I've actually started to change some of my own behaviors. Like I've been talking about how I do, body weight exercises at home. And now it's time to I'm starting to feel weak. I do my exercises, but I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. And I know I have muscle weakness, just from getting older, I'm getting muscle weakness. So I joined the gym and I'm trying to go, every other day or so. I'm saying I'm not going to get down on myself if I miss, a day or two, but because life does happen. But we have these emotions that are associated with with these changes in our life, and if we know ourselves and we know how we feel, we can use that and hopefully harness that energy that we're feeling and try to channel it in more productive and positive ways. You always hear when someone's going through a difficult time or you're trying to get someone to calm down, we always tell them, find your happy place. And basically what you're doing when you're telling someone to do that is you're telling them to channel that energy that they're feeling that's triggering some type of behavior and redirecting that energy into something more positive, like thinking of your happy place, or perhaps going to the doctor and getting some more tests, getting some more insight, and getting some more knowledge that's more in depth than what you can get on online. That's just generalized, and really start applying this in your day-to-day life, because this is a practice. Life is a practice. We have to keep living our life day in and day out.
I tell you, John, even though if you know the rules, it's not always easy to implement. Because I tell you, I threw everything we've talked about over the last 90 episodes into this, and yes, it helped definitely, but it's not easy. And
it's definitely not easy.
When you tell yourself fear, fantasy, expectation appearing real, it's hard to change. Though,
Tom. I agree, but I offer this as a perspective as well too. So here I am, my wife and I, you guys know this story well, that we paid off a lot of money, in debt, and in a short period of time. And even now to this day, I have to go in, on a regular basis and go to my spending plan and make sure that my bills are paid on time, that I'm following my plan, that I'm working my plan. If I neglect doing those things and just staying up to date with where I am in that, all hell is going to break loose and I'm going to cause myself a lot of problem. So, I think sometimes just getting a little bit better organized and having some type of plan, or laying out a plan and trying to work it, can really be something that's very positive and keep you moving in a positive direction, rather than just sitting there and wallowing in the woe is me attitude, which is not anything that you're doing, Tommy.
But I've been there. I've felt that.
Yeah. I'm not saying. I guess when I say that you haven't been, that you're not doing that, is what I mean by that is that you're not dwelling on it. You're not hanging out in that space for an extended period of time.
Well, what I'm doing,
you're going to feel all sorts of things. Go ahead.
Through all my training through martial arts, basically what I'm doing is I'm centering. I'm bringing myself back to a thing and saying I can deal with whatever comes. I can't change what I have, but I can change how I approach it. Same thing with martial arts. If you're getting, when I did Wing Chun, if you fall off track, you would come to the center to realign yourself. In Jiu-Jitsu, if you're fighting and you're getting thrown around, you focus on the basics, your posture, your making sure you keep your head up and away and your arms strong. There's certain things that you fall back on, your basics, that will keep you safe,
Right.
and allow you to recenter yourself. And it's the same thing with your mind. You recenter yourself and how you're going to handle with whatever comes your way.
Yeah, and it's so funny because as I hear you talking about that, I'm thinking about my spending plan and about how it does exactly what you just said to do, but it does it on paper. That center place is my plan, and working that plan, staying on the center place, making sure that I hit my marks and keep moving me forward, that keeps me on the path that I want to be on.
Right. And I know that if this is MS, if it's multiple sclerosis, and I have a chance of the possibility of losing my legs one day, I'm going to fight like hell and keep on exercising and training,
Right.
in order to try to prevent that from happening. But I still have the support system. My wife told me today, she's like, we're still hiking the Appalachian Trail if I have to carry you on my back. So she's a strong woman. So said, you better start training. And she said, oh, we'll bring John with us, and I'll have him carry your bag. So it's you can't do it alone, that's for sure. You need support.
Yeah.
But it's been a difficult time. It's been difficult, telling the children. It's been difficult showing this, this side of me where I feel kind of helpless at times in front of my children. And eventually I had to tell my friends and family, and a lot of people still don't know this podcast is probably going to be the first they've ever heard of that I've even going through this. My training partners back in Jiu-Jitsu don't have any idea what's going on. I talked to my coach yesterday. So it's, and I don't even know if I'll ever go back to Jiu-Jitsu. It depends on, what I have, but, my intentions are to go back. I probably won't fight anymore, but I hopefully will go back.
These things we just have to take day by day and see how the cards play out. It's so easy to get caught up in the here and the now, where you're caught up, in it, and you kind of lose sight of the future. But change is inevitable, and things are going to change whether we like them to or not. But just because things are the way they are now doesn't mean that, it's going to be better or worse. We just have to see how they play out sometimes. And we don't know what those answers are. And that is the very difficult part, I think, in all of this is, how do you ground yourself? How do you try to bring yourself back on center and not lose your mind?
No, I know.
Through all
and,
this.
Sometimes I still use humor. I mean, I'm never that serious of a person. In fact, at work right now, they're calling me Drunken Monkey because I walk, I told them I'm going to pick up Drunken Monkey Kung Fu style instead of Jiu-Jitsu, since I wobble all over the place. I'm perfect for it. But you have to have a sense of humor about everything too, as much as, whatever, even if I thought I was terminal, but, luckily I'm not. And it's made me more compassionate too, because I feel for the people that have a terminal disease. I feel for the people that have ALS and are going through real ALS symptoms. So.
Yeah, and it also reminds me, I mean, for those of us who don't have a very serious health condition going on, that it's a reminder of how precious life is and how quickly it can turn on you. I don't know. It just opens your eyes, I think. as far as, what can happen and how quickly life can change. There's a poem by a famous Stoic by the name of Seneca. He says, "You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. Of how much time has already gone by, you take no heed. You squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, though all the while that day which you bestow upon some person or thing is perhaps your last." It's like, I think, most of us don't really think about the end game until we get put into a position to where we're kind of forced to recognize our own mortality. And, they say if you really want to start living your life, think about your death, because it does motivate you. It does put into perspective all these little, aggravations, all the things that stress us out each and every day. Most of it is nothing in the big scheme of things. It's going to be forgotten about, in a matter of hours or days. It's just a blip. It's just a speck of dust in the wind.
Man. All work problems, all relationship problems, all that does not even come close to fearing of death. But if you could be like the samurai used to already assume that they were already dead. That's what made them such great fighters, because they weren't scared when they fought. They weren't afraid of getting their arm cut off because they've already assumed that it's going to happen. I'm a samurai warrior. I'm going to die by the sword.
Yeah. So anyhow, another thing, and we probably need to start wrapping this up, but dwell on the beauty of life. Watch the stars and see yourself running with them. That's from Marcus Aurelius.
Nice.
Meditation. So
if you have any questions or responses, or think you know what the hell I have, email us at swiftkickinass@gmail.com. We'd appreciate it just to say, hey, what's up? Sorry, my voice changes. It's one of the symptoms too. I go into what I call old man voice, where I sound like I'm talking like this. So if you heard that a couple times, that's what happens. It's one of the things I was afraid of, because that was one of John's father's main ALS symptoms. So all I can say is thanks for listening. Make sure you check out Swift Kick in the Ass. Sign out for our free membership site, which is still there. And email us at swiftkickinass@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. This is Tom.
This is John, and we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Till then, peace.
Not dead yet.
Don't plan on being for a while.